Instead of taking $1 trillion out of the economy so politicians can spread it around to special interests, the American option will keep trillions of dollars in the hands of American families and businesses. Instead of growing government where waste and corruption run rampant, we grow the private sector where innovation flourishes. Instead of giving the power and control of our economy to politicians and bureaucrats, we give Americans, the small businesses, the freedom to spend and invest their own money. The positive effects of letting more money stay in the private economy immediately and permanently will quickly become apparent. Beyond the job creation, I know we're all also interested in seeing our housing and real estate markets, as well as the automobile sector, emerge from the doldrums. Mr. President, within 5 years, the American option would produce $175 billion in residential investment and $362 billion in non-residential investment. That's more than $500 billion left to private citizens with the motivation to care for their families, invest in a new business, or expand their current productive activities. The auto industry will also experience a dramatic increase in sales activity. Between 2009 and 2011, total sales of new cars and light trucks would rise $24.5 billion more than they would otherwise. Again, allowing private citizens and businesses to use their own capital instead of sending it off to Washington benefits all sectors of the economy. Mr. President, the evidence in support of this legislation is not theoretical, but historical. Unlike the Keynesian arguments behind the Democrat spending and debt plan, John F. Kennedy in 1964, his tax reductions led to 9 million new private sector jobs in 5 years. Ronald Reagan's 1981 tax cuts led to 7 million in the same time frame. And 5 years on, the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts led to the creation of 4 and 6 million jobs, respectively. Every time the United States has cut marginal tax rates, millions of jobs have been created. Jobs that lifted the unemployed into the workplace, the working poor into the middle class, and the middle class into long-term economic security. Similar stories can be told of Great Britain's rescue under Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s, and more recently, Israel's economic reforms under their finance minister changed their whole economic platform. President Obama's own chief economist has shown that tax cuts do truly stimulate economic activity to the tune of $3 of increased output for every dollar of tax relief. On the other hand, the world's greatest experiments in spending our way out of recession have 3 textbook examples. The first is Franklin Roosevelt's response to the Great Depression. The New Deal began in 1933 with unemployment around 25% and effectively ended with the establishment of FDR's war economy in 1940, with unemployment still hovering around 20%. The second example is from the 1970s, when huge deficits in the United States neither spurred economic growth nor curtailed inflation. The third example is Japan, their so-called lost decade in which the Japanese government tried in vain for 10 years to spend its way out of a national real estate and investment collapse. Every discredited idea from these 3 monuments to economic mismanagement can be found in the fine print of the Democrats' trillion-dollar socialist experiment that we're considering this week. Massive spending, skyrocketing deficits, inevitable tax increases, and the disastrous unintended consequences of hurried and arbitrary meddling in our economy. Finally, Mr. President, there's another issue I want to address. I've recently heard some of my colleagues say that this recession is the fault of free market, that President Obama inherited problems of a conservative ideology. Mr. President, this charge is flatly false. In fact, it's incredible that anyone would say it. Let me be clear. Conservatism has nothing to apologize for. It was not conservatism that foisted Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac onto the national credit market. It was not conservatism that shook down the nation's banking system with the Community Reinvestment Act. It was not conservatism that asked for lied about, and then wasted $350 billion for the Troubled Asset Relief Program. Nor did conservatism sign on to the second tranche of the TARP funds, now in the hand of our esteemed new Treasury Secretary. It was not conservatism that used taxpayer funds to bail out the perpetrators of the Wall Street meltdown. It wasn't conservatism that led our financial industry to make these reckless loans, and it certainly wasn't conservatism that made that industry ask for the taxpayers to foot the bill for their idiocy. It wasn't conservatism that bailed out an auto industry bankrupted by its inability to manage costs and strangled by the tentacles of unionism. Every problem now plaguing our economy can be traced directly to some government policy that was passed over the vehement objections and warnings of principled conservatives. The same scenario is playing out with this spending bill, but the result is not preordained. The Democrat plan will fail. It will hurt our economy. It will kill jobs. It will lengthen and deepen the recession, and it will delay any hope of recovery. But it's not enough to merely stop this wrong bill. We must pass the right one. It's not simply a viable alternative that we're talking about. It's the American option to rescue our economy from a slide toward European social democracy. With a troubled economy, mounting national debt, and an entitlement crisis ready to explode, conservatives must offer bold and proven solutions to secure America's future. We cannot simply derail the liberal express. We must show our fellow countrymen a better plan. There's nothing wrong with our economy that a free people cannot solve. All we need is the freedom to take back from Washington the control of our economic destiny. The policy approach I have outlined can work, and if implemented, will work. How do I know? Because liberating people to pursue their own happiness and fortune is the only thing that has ever worked. I thank the chair and yield the floor.